Welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing, an inside look at foster care and adoption needs in Connecticut. My name is Jacqueline Ford. I have had the honor of working for the department for close to 30 years, and although I may be familiar with many of the topics I bring to you, I have invited experts in those fields to help dispel the myths and misconceptions that often act as barriers. Join us as we open our doors to an inside look at the Department of Children and Families. Welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing. Today on set we have with us Cristine McNaney from Wheeler Clinic. She's a neuropsychologist, and we're going to be speaking today about Channel 3 Kids Camp, the Siblings Connection Week that is funded by the Department of Children and Families. In one of our previous episodes we talked all about the camp and the requirements and why it's so important for our siblings to reconnect at camp. And today Cristine is going to continue that conversation with us. Hello, Cristine.
Hi.
Hi, welcome to our set. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you.
As I was saying in one of our previous episodes, it's so nice to be in person and not on the Zoom screens and team meetings. It's nice to...
And no mask.
And no mask. Right. It's nice to be here with you today. So let's talk. So our intention for our discussions about the Channel 3 Kids Camp is to enlighten and help our DCF staff understand the importance of bringing siblings together in this nature camp that's beautiful and outdoors, and also to let our viewers know about this wonderful opportunity that Channel 3 Kids Camp in Andover offers for DCF and for other weeks that they have Camp 2. So let's just begin. Can you tell our viewers and our DCF staff too a little bit about yourself?
Well, as you said, I'm a neuropsychologist, and I've been with Wheeler Clinic for 28 years. I started as a practicum student, and they couldn't get rid of me after that. And I'm also now Associate Director of Evaluation Services at Wheeler. So 51 weeks of the year, I'm in an office, and then the year of Sibling Connections Camp, I get to go out and play.
Well,
or the week, sorry, of Sibling Connections
Camp.
For
that whole week.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's wonderful when you talk about, someone being in that same position. We're not the same position, but the same place for so long, and that longevity. And you obviously must love what you do, and I think you're pretty good at it too, from what I know about you.
I try hard.
So tell us how Wheeler first got involved in Sibling Connections Camp. I know it's funded by the Department of Children and Families. So how did Wheeler get involved?
So my understanding, I've been with the camp since just after the grant was approved for Channel 3 Kids Camp, and my understanding is that when the request for proposals was put out by the department, 2 people showed up. And one was Channel 3 Kids Camp. They obviously have this tremendous camp and have for years, and had the camping staff and all the facilities and equipment. Wheeler had the clinicians and the clinical expertise. So the 2 of us sitting there, we knowing we needed a camp, they knowing they were going to need some clinical support. It was sort of meant to be. So at that point, we collaborated with each other, and we developed what has now become, well, that was 13 years ago. This will be our 12th year of camp because of COVID last year. Had to skip.
Yeah, a lot of wonderful years, and a lot of wonderful memories have been made over the course of the years. Yeah. So in your clinical experience, can you share with the viewers the importance of siblings spending time together? For people who don't really understand the way the department system works. Sometimes our kids can't be placed in foster care together, or for many different reasons. Or maybe one child is still with their birth family and one child is in care for whatever reason that is. So can you tell us from your clinical experience, and just as a mom yourself, why is it important for siblings to spend time together?
Well, and as a mom myself, but also as a foster parent. I am a foster parent. I have a 20-year-old, almost 21-year-old foster daughter who has 2 siblings, and I've known them all their lives. They almost came to the camp one year, but their circumstances changed, so that didn't end up working out. But from all of those perspectives, and having been a sibling, I think we all know being an only child is different than being a sibling. But if you're in a sibling group, that's really your longest relationship in your life. You may have your parents since birth, but in most cases, they predecease you, and they predecease any siblings you have. So you have siblings throughout your life. You have a shared history with your siblings. They know you inside and out, good, bad, and ugly. And so particularly going through circumstances like removal from the home or any other stressor, having siblings that can go through that with you, and maintaining that connection to whatever extent is safe and healthy for everybody is just so important. And you can see how important it is to the kids when they get to camp.
Yeah, and I've experienced that in being there on the day that they all arrive, and if they didn't arrive together in the same mode of transportation and just seeing one another, it is so endearing to see that happen. You spend a lot of time at the camp. I know that week, and that's your camp week as well. What have you witnessed? What have you experienced while you're there?
It's pretty amazing, and I knew you were going to ask me that question, and it's hard to put into words the quality of the connection that the kids have. One of the things I was going to say is when you first see them coming off the bus and seeing each other for the first time, for many of them in quite a while, for a bunch of different circumstances. Some kids, it's the next day that they don't see their sibling because of transportation glitches. They didn't get to the transportation on time or something, and so they worry that they're not going to come, and then they show up, and it's this relief and this sort of openness and exuberation by both of them. And when they're engaging in activities together, even just nothing structured, just being together, just being in each other's presence, I think is really neat to watch how they just gel most of the time. I will say there are times when there are conflicts between siblings in every sibling relationship. Pardon me. Sometimes kids who have been through traumatic experiences in their family have particularly strong feelings about each other. Sometimes for kids in care, one of them may have been the one who blew the whistle in order to keep the sibling group safe, but not all siblings see it that way.
Right.
So there have been some tense moments with kids just in terms of being a little bit more stiff, standoffish, and not wanting to spend a tremendous amount of time together. One of the nice things about the camp staff is that they've been really flexible to try to create more time for those kids who want it, and less time really together, but more parallel if that's what works best for the kids during the camp week.
I can imagine that for some of the kids, just seeing one another could be a trigger of something that they have endured, because all of the children involved in our system have had traumatic experiences of some way, have been abused or neglected in some way. So leading to that next question about therapy needs and therapy. Is this a therapeutic camp, or is Wheeler providing therapeutic support?
It's not a therapeutic camp, although it may be therapeutic. It may have a healing quality to it. But the Wheeler clinicians, we have 2 clinicians who are there throughout the entire day. We have a 3rd who comes in the evening, and then I'm on call 24/7 the whole week. I spend a lot of most days there as well. But the Wheeler folks are there to really help the counselors provide whatever support kids might need, because they're typical kids. They're just coming from really unusual circumstances. And so the things that the camp staff usually does to help kids have fun and soothe kids' fears and calm kids when they get upset, those things will usually be effective. But if emotions are running a little higher, because often kids who've had trauma histories tend to be more easily dysregulated, we're there to help coach them through those times. We participate right alongside them, so if something comes up and we're there, then we'll intervene. But we're not there to provide therapy. We're not there to teach the counselors how to be therapists. We're there to provide support. Yeah.
So, I've been a part of that, the referral process, once all of the children have registered. And I know that you play a very big role in assessing all of those applications and making sure that the child's needs can be met at the camp. Can you talk a little bit about your role in the registration process?
Sure. Well, from the development of the enrollment form through day one of camp, we're looking at how we can best meet the needs of kids who are coming to camp. First, making sure they're appropriate for camp. We don't want to set them up to have a negative experience. We want to set them up to succeed. So we've developed the enrollment form in such a way to get as much information as possible about the child's challenges and strengths in order to help them really have an optimal experience while they're there. And so once we get all of the applications in with the completed enrollment forms, then I go through, as you said, every one, and I look over them and I see if there's any kind of red flags that we want to follow up on about any of the kids. And so I make lots and lots of phone calls to DCF workers. Most of them can expect to hear from me at some point before camp, and just to get more detail about some of the circumstances, to get some ideas about what might be triggers for the kids, to get ideas about what might be helpful in calming them, or what supports would be useful or not useful at any given time. And DCF workers have been really good about getting back to me and filling me in. Sometimes we'll call foster parents. I can only do that in advance if we have a release filled out to speak to the foster parents. So we're very happy to talk with foster parents, but the clinicians can only do that, myself included, if we have that separate release form signed. Now, the camp staff isn't bound by HIPAA the same way we are, which is why they can make phone calls about registration materials and forms and such that they need. But we can't do that to give or receive clinical information or more personal information about the kids without DCF consent.
So I think that's important to note for our DCF staff that will be watching, that that release needs to be completed, so that if you need to speak to the foster parent, especially during that week where the kids are there and you need to have that contact with the foster parent, that you're authorized to do so.
And we will call during the week sometimes if kids are starting to show any kinds of, again, red flags during the week. We may call the foster parents, just let them know what's going on and see if they're familiar with those behaviors and what sorts of things they've done in the past to help kids through those tough times. We may, if there's clinicians involved, outpatient therapists or other people involved with the kids, we may also give a call to them if we have the proper releases signed to get information about how we can help.
That's great. So when you talk about that, the development of the registration until that day that camp starts, are there any children that just are not appropriate for the camp?
We try to be as flexible as possible, and we do certainly take kids that more traditional camp weeks might not take, because we do have that clinical support. And the Channel 3 Kids Camp staff is incredibly well trained, even apart from us. That's another thing. We do provide training to them before our camp week. I left that out.
And is that a few days before camp starts?
Yeah,
you have that training?
It's once all their counselors have arrived and they're already in full swing, and when they're getting all their training before any of the camp weeks start, we provide some training so they understand the impact of trauma and some effective behavior intervention strategies and relationship building and the importance of boundaries, those sorts of things. And now I'm forgetting that last question that you asked.
But I think that really prepares the staff and also your staff to also connect with the camp counselors that are coming in. I know that in the past it's been international volunteers that have come, or actually paid counselors that have come, and this year it'll be a little bit different. But I think that pre-service is so important, given just the complex nature and the trauma that our kids have faced. So the question I had asked you is, are there any exclusions about allowing a child to attend?
So I think safety is the overarching issue, and if there's any recent or severe kinds of unsafe behaviors, so injury to self, injury to others, fire setting, sexually reactive behavior, running away, if any of those is marked on the enrollment form, expect a call from me. marking that doesn't necessarily mean we won't take them, but I'll want to get a lot more information about the details around it, and talk to whoever's been working with them around those issues specifically, because we want to make sure that they're safe. So just like with kids who have those sorts of issues, we're also flexible with the age of a child. You asked if there's any kids we won't take. I believe the registration materials say age 8, but if there's somebody just asked me about this the other day. They had a 12-year-old and a 7.5-year-old, and they said, does that mean that they couldn't go? I said, send the application and we'll look at it. A lot of kids who've had trauma are not developmentally the same as their chronological age. So sometimes that really wouldn't be appropriate to flex on the age, but there are times when it would be perfectly appropriate. When we determine that a kid is perfectly capable of handling all that camp entails. But little kids, especially those who've already been removed from their home and maybe are just in a new foster placement for a couple of months, the change to this unfamiliar camp setting with unfamiliar caretakers may not be the best situation to put them in.
Right, at that moment in time. So for someone filling out the registration form, and in your years of experience with this process, although now it's a little bit easier because it's a link and it's online, and there's different ways to submit the forms that are needed, what would you say is just crucial information that you need to know in that registration process to ensure a safe and the best possible experience for our kids?
The camp administration, they need the medical form, and they need all the things that are legally required to send a child to camp. I'm sure Dave spoke about that in your last segment about the camp, but from the clinical perspective, I guess I would just encourage people to be really honest. If you don't share something on the enrollment form that's asked about because you think the child may not be accepted, then the child might come to camp and we won't know how to support them if they demonstrate that issue. So being candid, calling us to discuss if you have a concern about it, if you think a child might not be appropriate, or you're wondering if you should even bother taking the time to send in the application. I think those are really important, and signing that foster parent release form.
Yes. Yeah, because I know in the registration process you have to make sure that their immunizations are up to date, and there's a lot of, it's not a simple process, but it's a process that's important so that the child can have the best experience at that camp. So I think you answered one of my next questions is like during that week, can foster parents call and ask how their child's doing, and you can have, as long as there's a release signed, you can have that communication during the week.
And I'm not sure if Dave had mentioned this, but folks are also welcome to send the kids emails through the camp, and they will get to the kids, so there can be that sort of communication.
Oh, that's good to know.
But we really encourage people to call and check in. I mean, I know for when my child went to camp when he was much younger, I know that it was sort of a week off, sort of, for me, which is fine. But I think if you're worrying and it will help you have a week off and perhaps help your child be more successful at camp, it's fine to call, and we're happy to share information as long as we have that signed release of information. And it has to be signed by DCF. It can't be signed by the foster parent.
Okay. That's great to know. As we're beginning to close our segment today, if a DCF social worker or even a foster parent said, I really don't know if I should, send my child to Sibling Connection Camp, what would you say based on your experience of really having been there and experiencing how the kids, the fun that they have? And I think it's important for our staff to know and foster parents to know too that it doesn't mean that those brothers and sisters or sisters and brothers are together that whole entire time, especially when there's a big age difference. They're doing activities, they're forming friendships, but then there is that time where they can be together, and just knowing that they're on the same grounds in the same camp can be reassuring for our most parentified children that are at the camp, just knowing that they're there and they're safe. So if someone were thinking, I'm not too sure I wanted to go through this process, what would you say to them?
I guess I would say, you know your child best, first of all. Camp is not for every child. However, this camp, as I said, we've done this for 12 years, or 12 camp seasons, and there's only been a couple of kids who I think perhaps weren't ready for camp yet. And so I think giving us a call ahead of time and running your concerns by us and seeing if you feel comfortable with the new information that you get. I've seen so many kids initially come in hesitant, not sure about things, not sure about seeing their siblings, not sure about being at camp, not sure about sleeping in cabins or near bugs. And they have not wanted to leave when it was time to go home. They're ready for, when is it going to happen next year? We had a sibling group of 4, one of whom moved off to California. The department flew him back for the next, I think, 2 years of camp with his brothers because they all just loved it.
Wow.
And they've all aged out now.
Well, I think what's resonated, in my mind and everything that you said is if there's any questions, just call you, just talk about it, run things by you, scenarios, concerns, and if the child is appropriate for this camp, then, fill out that necessary information.
Right, exactly.
But I thank you so much for being here
Thanks
with
for
me today.
me.
It was so nice to have you here.
You as well.
Now we're going to show a video from the camp. It's a great way to see the fun that the kids are having and the different activities that they're having. So I encourage you to watch that video and consider enrolling your child involved with the DCF system into the camp. Thank you for watching.
Beginning lesson in the woods was walking around, adventuring around, doing that cool stuff, me walking. So, yeah.
It was really fun, and I had a lot of fun finding our way back because we got to look at all the different landmarks we found and made, and it was really fun seeing the stuff that we saw on the way.
We got lost and we found landmarks. We made landmarks, and then we used them to find our way back.
My favorite things about ropes is climbing because you can do zip lines and it's fun activity and you have to keep balancing like things.
My favorite thing about archery is shooting the bows because you have like a learning experience if you've never shot before, and maybe one day if you get good enough you might become like a professional, maybe being like the Olympics.
My favorite thing about archery is shooting the bows because, the arrows, because when you hit the target it feels